Hi, my name is Lisa Shelton, and welcome to Washington, D.C. For the next few minutes, my friends and I would like to tell you about the Government in Action Youth Tour. What is the Youth Tour, you ask? Well, it's
one terrific bus ride.
The Kennedy Center, the Potomac River.
Ice cream.
Souvenirs. The National Archives.
More pizza.
Dress up occasions.
Silly, sticky stuff. Wrong. What is it? Say it one more time. Roommates.
Breakfast.
Swimming.
Gas. Lots of gas.
The United States Capitol.
The FBI building.
The Washington Monument.
The Jefferson Memorial.
The Lincoln Memorial. Twin Bridges Marriott. The Watergate Building.
The Smithsonian Institution. Tired feet.
For more than 2 decades, the electric cooperatives of Texas have been sending high school-age Texans just like you to Washington, D.C. for a first-hand look at our federal government in action. For most, the trip has been an experience of a lifetime, with friendships that have lasted throughout their adult lives. But the adventure doesn't start here. It starts in your school. Right now, you have the opportunity to earn an all-expense-paid trip to Washington, D.C. next summer. Take advantage of it. Here's some who did.
Most of the kids earned the expense-paid trip to Washington, D.C. by entering their local co-op's youth tour contest. Some of them had to write an essay. I had to give a speech. Boy, was I nervous.
As I contemplated whether I wanted to go on this trip and whether I wanted to enter the essay contest, many thoughts went through my head. I'm very active in other activities, as many high school people are. And I wondered, would it really be worth the time and effort?
I thought the bus ride was going to be real boring. Actually, it turned out to be one of the best parts of the trip, getting to know everyone. I talked to some other people from other states who went on the youth tour, and they flew, and they didn't have the chance to meet everyone as much as we did and really stick together as a state.
When they told me that we were going to be 3 days on a bus going to Washington, I said, oh no. I said, if it's anything like riding in the school bus, I said, we might as well just forget it. But it ended up being real exciting. You'd be surprised what you can do on a Greyhound bus and while it's moving.
When we went through Nashville, we stopped at the Country Music Hall of Fame, and it was kind of neat to see how the country music has changed from the 1920s to the present.
Driving through the Shenandoah Valley is very spectacular. The view and everything, looking down on everybody made you feel real powerful and everything.
As we passed through the Shenandoah Valley, we realized that we were getting closer and closer to Washington. The tallest building in the nation's capital is the Washington Monument, and when we saw that, we knew we had arrived.
I'd always heard of Washington, always seen it on television, but you really don't get the full feeling of Washington until you're actually in the city itself.
The Bureau of Engraving and Printing was fantastic. We saw millions of dollars being printed. They don't give samples, but you can buy souvenirs.
Behind me is the Smithsonian Institution, which is sometimes referred to as America's attic.
I knew it was big, but when I went in there, it just blew my mind. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. It was beautiful. It had many of the first planes. It had Lindbergh's plane, Spirit of St. Louis, and then it had the Wright brothers plane, and it had several different rockets, artificial satellites. It was really neat. It had a lot about the history of space.
Remember, you can be here next June.
Behind me is the Capitol of the United States of America. This is where the Congress meets and makes all of its laws.
When I was standing on the steps of the Capitol, I felt, words just can't describe what I felt, because that's where all America's laws and legislations take place, and just knowing that I was being there and being a part of it was something very special to me.
We also got to see our congressman, and it was very informative. I learned a lot of things about what goes on in government. It was neat that we could sit there and listen to what other things were going on that seemed so foreign to us.
Defense matters are very expensive, You start out on a carrier or a gun, and the gun might have 10, 15 changes before it's finished. Instead of costing $1 billion, it may cost $10 billion just to perfect it, or a ship or whatever it is. So it's an unknown science in many respects, and it's very expensive as well to maintain it. So we've got these constant fights. How do you settle between the domestic program and defense?
Seeing Washington firsthand and the way that the government runs really helps me to understand the detailed problems that the government goes through to solve problems. I personally am going to try to bring it to my local level because I know that I can make a difference.
You could be here next June.
Capitol Hill is more than just the Capitol building. Across the street are the Supreme Court and the Library of Congress, two of Washington's most beautiful buildings.
I think the most fascinating and beautiful building that I saw in Washington, D.C. was the Library of Congress. You just could not believe how gorgeous one building could be. I expected to see a kind of a dull building with a bunch of library books in it, but instead it was just gorgeous, anything from sculptures to paintings.
There was a stairway you could go to the top of the building and look down on the actual library where people were studying.
We are standing on the steps of the Supreme Court. This is where all major decisions of the United States is interpreted through their laws.
Inside there are many paintings and statues of all the justices through the years. It's a very impressive building. It's very large. Inside you can see a courtroom, what it actually looks like.
At the Kennedy Center, we went into the Hall of Flags, and we went through, and we were going through the flags, trying to find all the countries and seeing which flags we could identify. And it was really neat, looking at all the different banners.
The most impressive thing on this shoot tour, I thought, was the sunset parade at Iwo Jima.
Seeing the Marines in their dress uniform was exhilarating. I like to see men in uniform. They were very precise and exact. The performance they gave was wonderful.
During the energy battle at Youth Day, I was sitting way back in the back trying to see everything that was happening in the front. And I did learn a lot about our country and about our cooperatives, and I learned that everybody has a different opinion about everything, and that's what our country's all about.
Behind me, the National Archives. It's the home of the Constitution of the United States of America. It made me feel real patriotic, and it means a lot to me. It shows me my rights, and I really feel like I found my American heritage.
The youth tour is educational, informative, but is also fun. The happening is an evening of food, dancing, games, and just plain fun.
We danced until we were ready to drop. There's something really special for everybody that was there. The next morning, we visited the FBI building and learned a lot about crime detection. Did you know that from a single strand of hair, the FBI can determine the age, blood type, sex, and other information about a person?
We went to a workshop at the national headquarters. We learned how our local co-op fits into a complex system of generating and distributing electricity. We learned about co-op principles, electrical safety, and co-op financing.
Washington, D.C. is a city full of memorials to honor the great American men and women who helped to shape the destiny of the country.
Standing up and looking at the monument of Thomas Jefferson and of his sculpture made me realize just exactly how important men of America have always been. I felt that he was standing there and kind of telling us that we should be proud of our country and that we should always be true patriots of America.
The Lincoln Memorial made me feel sad in a way. It was really quite an experience looking at him and the face of the president and the eyes, they really do seem to follow you. And then the engravings, the speeches on the walls, it really made you think about Lincoln and what he did for our country.
When I was standing at the Vietnam Memorial and looking at it, many feelings traced through my mind, especially since my daddy was there and knowing that he fought over there for our country, but he came back alive and he had friends on that wall. It was just a very special feeling to me. And
I don't really think about things like that very often, but It really stirred up something inside me. A lot of people didn't want to even do that, and they went ahead and fought for us, and that takes a lot of courage.
At the Arlington Cemetery, it made me think about all those people who did, in fact, die for my freedom, and yet they didn't even know me. Well, every way you looked, the headstones were in perfect order. It's a wonderful feeling to know that if it hadn't been for them, I couldn't experience everything I am today and be as proud of our system of government as I am today.
When I saw the eternal flame at Kennedy's gravesite, I guess you could say, it made my stomach drop. He never really had the chance to do for this country what I think he wanted to, but it makes me feel good that he is honored in that way, and that flame will never go out. And it's really a neat feeling to know that flame will burn as long as I live, and probably as long as my grandkids will live.
One of the most intense moments was watching the changing of the guard at the tombs of the unknown soldiers. Their uniforms were flawless and their movements were precise. And just think, these men are on duty 24 hours a day, every day of the year, regardless of the weather. It was obvious that this was an elite group of men.
Laying the wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, that was something you'll never forget, and something I was very proud to be a part of.
Well, when I was walking down those steps, at first it was a little scary. As I got closer and closer to the tomb, I began to feel odd, began to feel a little bit sad for those soldiers that were unknown. We stopped and the guard brought the wreath to us, and we placed our hands on the wreath and walked towards the tomb, and then set the wreath down, turned around and went back to our place. And when we put our hands across our heart during the playing of taps,
I've never had a feeling like this before, and I was proud to be doing it. I was doing it for Texas and my country. When they were playing taps, all I could think about were the soldiers, the many thousands of soldiers that were killed in all of those wars. And I felt like they were the particular three laying there were calling at me from their graves, and they were trying to tell me their names. And that wreath, it symbolized honor and courage and everything that an adjective could put, and it was really something very special.
Behind me is Mount Vernon, the home of George Washington, the first president of the United States of America.
When you're actually at Mount Vernon and you actually see his tomb and where he lived, there's just an enormous sense of pride and respect you have for this man.
It was like a postcard. It was beautiful. It made you wish you could be back in George Washington's time and live like he lived and live that lifestyle, because it was just such a wonderful place.
You could be here next June. As we left the city, I looked back and thought of all of the marvelous things that we had seen and experienced, but one of the highlights was yet to come. Lookout Mountain was really a special place. Going up the hill on the incline was so amazing. It was so beautiful. All of the trees were green, and it was really special riding up the hill, and it made you feel like you were really closer to God.
When we went up there to Lookout Mountain, it's like you could scoop up the clouds and, in a hat. It felt like you could just reach up and touch the Lord. Everywhere there's such beauty and splendor, and to have all your close friends right around you. Our Father's Day devotional was planned by the youth, and when just about every one of us got up there to talk.
I helped plan the devotional
whoever wanted to do something, you would just raise your hand and volunteer to read scripture or pray. It was so beautiful. There was one young lady who got up to sing, and she didn't have any music behind her. And her voice just rang. It was so perfect. I plan on telling my kids about it and take them back there to experience the same thing I felt, for it's something so unreal.
The youth tour is a chance of a lifetime. That is just a group of words, but it really is the people. The experiences are more than words can describe.
The friendships I've made, along with the education that I've received about our government, will affect me for the rest of my life.
Anyone that is considering going on this trip or even just watching this film, I would encourage you to try for this trip. It took me 3 tries. It's an experience of a lifetime.
I would really like to encourage more black students to get involved in this youth tour. It exposes you to the outside world, and the world isn't all that bad as you may think. It's really beautiful, and it's a great experience.
This trip is worth any sacrifice that you have to make to come on this trip. I had to make some, and it's worth every penny, every bit of it.
While I was up there at my congressman, I applied for internship, and I would have never done that before.
I'm really interested in what the government is doing now. I like now keep up to date with what's happening.
It's just a feeling that you can hardly put into words about what Washington means to me after you've seen it through the eyes of the real electric youth tour.
Remember, you could be here next June.
You could be here next June.
You can be here next June.